Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a review on A Christmas Carol. I'm not just going to be talking about like a Christmas Carol movie. This is going to be a video on A Christmas Carol retrospect. I'm going to be talking about A Christmas Carol, the story by Charles Dickens, and I'm going to be talking about the other light adaptations of A Christmas Carol. It's hard to pick a adaptation of Christmas Carol because there's so many different versions of it that the reason why it's been done to death so many times is because A Christmas Carol is a public domain story. Before I delve into what my favorite Christmas Carol adaptations are, here's my review on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol was written by Charles Dickens and it was published in 1843. A Christmas Carol is about Ebenezer Scrooge, a mean, nasty old man who thinks of nothing but himself and only cares about money. Ebenezer Scrooge hates Christmas. Anytime someone wishes him a Merry Christmas, his response is, "Bah, humbug." Scrooge works in his own office, named him and after Jacob Marley. Jacob Marley was his partner who died 7 years on Christmas, and he died dead as a doornail. He has an assistant named Bob Cratchit, who is cheap on him and is poor. Scrooge has a nephew named Fred, who he shuts out in his life every time he invites him over for Christmas. Scrooge is a very cheap man that he refuses to put down money for the poor. On Christmas Eve, his deceased partner, Jacob Marley, visits him and warns him about following the same footsteps as him. And he also tells him that he will be haunted by 3 spirits to learn a lesson from each spirit. Ebenezer Scrooge is visited by Christmas past, present, and future. The first spirit that visits Ebenezer Scrooge is Christmas past. Christmas past takes Ebenezer Scrooge back to his past. The past shows his childhood and upbringing. To boarding school, never went home for the holidays. Mr. Scrooge's father was not easy on him, he was tough, and he was not soft on him. After the death of his mother, he sent him away to boarding school. Christmas past fast forwards when he's an adult, working as an apprentice for old Fezziwig. We see how Ebenezer was not always greedy, mad, and grumpy, and there was a time where he did like Christmas. He met a woman named Belle that he fell in love with. As time went on, he became more obsessed with work and making money than giving Belle attention. Belle saw that he was becoming a different person, that he was not the same person she first met and fell in love with. Belle felt sad and left out. Scrooge realizes that if he had married Belle, he could have married her and had children with her, if he hadn't been neglectful to Belle. Christmas past lesson to Scrooge is that the things that we regret in life, we cannot change the past. The third spirit, Christmas present, shows Scrooge on how what people think of him in present day. Scrooge is mean, greedy, and not a caring person. He only cares about money. This present shows him how that he doesn't take his nephew Fred for granted. He also does not take Bob Cratchit for granted for how hard-working he is. Bob Cratchit deserves more. Cratchit cannot afford a fancy Christmas dinner for his family, and that he cannot afford proper medical treatment for his son, Tiny Tim. He hates Ebenezer Scrooge despite Bob Cratchit making a toast about him being the founder of the feast. Christmas present shows him how that his investments in the poor and the prisons have not been invested properly. Class can't afford to buy food and they can't find work, and they struggle to make ends meet. Third and final spirit, Christmas future, shows him what the future will be like if Scrooge does not change. Friends, no legacy, and won't die with dignity. No warmth or generosity. And Tiny Tim will die. We say that Christmas Carol has a little heart to, especially when we see the Christmas future. It looks like something out of a horror movie. But that's the idea, though. It's supposed to be dark and scary. Scrooge's epiphany. He becomes a changed man, and he keeps his word. Discuss A Christmas Carol. Now I'm going to talk about the movies of A Christmas Carol. Like I said, there's so many different Christmas Carol movies. I'm only going to talk about the ones I've seen, the ones I really love. And if there's one that I missed on this list, don't take it personal. There's just so many out there. I don't know every Christmas Carol adaptation. I'm only sticking to the basics. The ones I know and the ones I've seen so many times, the ones I really love a lot. Particular list or any order. I'm just going to talk about different Christmas Carol adaptations just randomly. The list I've seen a lot, and there are others I haven't seen in a long time. Now, like some TV shows have done like parodies of A Christmas Carol, like Sanford and Son and The Odd Couple. In this video, I will talk about what my favorite version of A Christmas Carol is. List of A Christmas Carol adaptation. The Muppet Christmas Carol from 1992 with Michael Kane. This was my first intro to A Christmas Carol as a little kid. Watching this as a little kid, I still do to this day. It's very cute. Basic, like, Muppet's version of A Christmas Carol. That's much all I can say about it. Moments like when Gonzo breaks the fourth wall playing Charles Dickens and with Rizzo the Rat. He's a pretty good Scrooge, but I feel like he could actually do a better, serious Scrooge in a different type of Christmas Carol adaptation. Christmas Carol from 1983. This was probably the second Christmas Carol adaptation I saw as a kid. It's Christmas Carol. This is basically Disney's version of Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol. Duck plays Ebenezer Scrooge, hence his name. Mickey Mouse plays Bob Cratchit. Donald Duck plays his nephew Fred. And Goofy as Jacob Marley. Go figure. Duck plays Webigail, Ebenezer Scrooge's girlfriend for the past. Have other characters from other Disney films playing characters in A Christmas Carol, like the characters from Fun and Fancy Free. The Giant plays Christmas Present from Jack and the Beanstalk, and there's Mr. Toad. Mr. Toad plays Old Fezziwig. Where I thought they did a great job of making their own version of A Christmas Carol in such a short Disney short. It was Christmas Carol. This is definitely one I enjoy watching every Christmas with my father. It's cute, it's heartwarming, it can be very sad at times for a cartoon. Orders of the Christmas spirit. Instead of Christmas, past, present, and future coming in order, they start with Christmas present, then past, then future instead. Started with Christmas future first, the movie would be over right away, and then there'd be no lessons learned from the other spirits. It also has a lot of good songs in it, just like the Muppet Christmas Carol. Carol from 1997. Back in the 90s, 20th Century Fox made a cartoon musical of A Christmas Carol with Tim Curry as Scrooge. He had a dog for a pet to make it more family kid friendly. When Scrooge and his girlfriend Belle are singing Across This Bridge Alone. As a kid, it just will not leave your head. In 2006, this was a Looney Tunes version of A Christmas Carol. I'll admit, I haven't seen this one in a long time, so it's really hard to say on what my thoughts are on this film. I just thought I'd mention it. And also, I know there was a 70s Looney Tunes Christmas Carol, but I never saw that one either. 1988, directed by Richard Donner with Bill Murray. This is basically like Ghostbusters Christmas Carol, where Bill Murray is outnumbered 3-1. A Christmas Carol. Within A Christmas Carol, because it's about Bill Murray plays Frank Cross, a beady businessman working for a television company trying to make the best Christmas Carol movie ever. Christmas, but yeah, he likes the idea that people stay home for Christmas to watch television, and that's how he makes his living. Make a Christmas Carol movie on television, and yet he's a Scrooge himself in real life, set in modern times. Christmas Carol, they reverse the spirits. The difference is they come in the same order. The only difference is Ghost of Christmas Past is a alcoholic smoking taxi driver played by David Johansen, as you know from the song Feeling Hot, Hot, Hot. Sense of humor with my bad impressions. Instead of a Santa Claus type look like in the original Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. Except when you open up his robe, it's like Nightmare on Elm Street. Other different parodies of A Christmas Carol, but this is probably my personal favorite parody of A Christmas Carol. It's funny, it's entertaining, it has a lot of good slapstick comedy. When Carol Kane is Christmas Present, slapsticks Bill Murray, it's so funny. Great job is funny and hilarious as a parody of Scrooge. He's greedy and an asshole, but he's hilarious. Probably one of the first Christmas Carol adaptations to be set in a modern day time. Scrooge loses the only woman he ever loved. In this movie, he gets her back in the end and does not lose her again twice. That Scrooge is like a Ghostbusters meets A Christmas Carol, because Bill Murray's outnumbered 3-1. Bob Golgat's character kind of resembles Rick Moranis a little bit in some ways. Nerdy, goofy, shy, and a little awkward at times. Bob Golgat's character, but then again, people would have thought this was another Ghostbusters kind of movie. Ebby, basically set in modern times, where it was probably, for me personally, one of the first few times I ever saw a female Scrooge. It was the first time they ever did a female Scrooge in a Christmas Carol adaptation. Like I said, for me personally, this was the first time I ever saw a female Scrooge in a Christmas Carol adaptation. Hallmark and Lifetime made modern day like Christmas Carol adaptations. This surprisingly is not a bad, it's a pretty solid one. 2000 with Vanessa Williams. And again, just like Susan Lucci, this is a female Scrooge, but this is probably also one of the first time where we saw an African-American female playing Scrooge. Being a greedy businessman, she's a rich, full of herself, narcissistic pop culture singer. The Odd Couple's Christmas Carols. There have probably been a lot of different television shows where they did their own version of A Christmas Carol. But the two that stand out in my mind are Sanford and Son and The Odd Couple's Christmas Carol. You big dummy! Sanford impression. Episode is Ebenezer Sanford. Lamont asks Fred to clean up the junkyard, but he won't do it due to being lazy. So he hires a young teenager to do his work because the teenager needs money before Christmas. And Lamont sees how he's very greedy to the kid. Christmas Carol dream. Spirits rather than like the different like actors playing the spirit. My favorite jokes in this episode, like when Christmas Present shows him the present, he says, "We will fly above the clouds," and Fred's response is, I ain't smoking that stuff. Or when Christmas Future shows Fred's future, he's asked why this is your future, and Fred's response is, no deodorant. Spirit, he looks at him and his response is, who are you, the spirit of Liberace? Fred becomes a changed man, he becomes nice, kind, generous, and he gives the kid more money, but he still insults Aunt Esther. Scrooge gets an Oscar episode. Felix and the gang are doing a Christmas Carol charity for children. They want Oscar to play Scrooge, but he refuses. Scrooge, Felix and the gang try to audition to think they can play a better Scrooge than Oscar, but deep down they just know that Oscar is the right role to play Ebenezer Scrooge. Again, to play Ebenezer Scrooge, he has a Christmas Carol dream. This is just like in the Sanford and Son episode. A lot of funny jokes, like when Felix plays Jacob Marley and he falls down the building and he comes back up with a bandage on his arm. Also, like when Oscar Ebenezer asks his Felix Marley, he goes, "Where's the real Marley?" He goes, "We couldn't get him, it's his busy season." Tim in Oscar's Ebenezer Scrooge's dream sequence, and every time he says, "God bless us all, everyone," he kneels down on someone. God bless us all, everyone. Oscar's dream. After Oscar's dream, he wakes up and decides to play Scrooge in a Christmas Carol play for charity. Christmas Carol. This is a pretty good, decent one. Not much to say about it other than the fact that it's just the same like format over and over again. With Reginald Owen as Ebenezer Scrooge. Like full adaptations of A Christmas Carol for its time. Even though there were other silent films before that, but I don't really know like which one was like the first like ever like official like full-length adaptation of A Christmas Carol for this time period. Adaptation, this was more of like a comedy than a serious Christmas Carol. So compared to other future Christmas carols, not changed till the end. Scrooge in this movie changes quickly in the present rather than up until the end of the movie after the future. 2009. This is probably the only Christmas Carol I can think of that came out of the last, recent year of a modern Christmas Carol done by Disney. 3D animation like the Polar Express. Christmas Carol film I can think of that came out in the last 10 years that comes to mind. I haven't really kept up or tracked with other Christmas Carol adaptations the last 10 years. Christmas carols and go-to Christmas Carol movies. Jim Carrey's an okay Ebenezer Scrooge, but he's not one of my favorite Scrooge actors. The visuals are very nice, but I still recommend this film just for how, spectacular the film looks in 3D animation. Carol adaptation. An honorable mention goes to The Man Who Invented Christmas, a true story about how when Charles Dickens got the inspiration and wrote A Christmas Carol. Highly recommended. This was probably one of my favorite Christmas movies in recent years. Christmas Carol adaptation is George C. Scott's Christmas Carol and Alistair Sim's Christmas Carol. Carol adaptations because they are probably the best Christmas Carol adaptations of them all. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick George C. Scott's Christmas Carol. Played Ebenezer Scrooge. As a kid reading the Christmas Carol book, he was probably the first Scrooge actor to pop in my mind when I read the book. He has a grouchy voice. That's the way Scrooge is supposed to sound like to me. Serious manner tone voice than a grouchy voice. Favorite actor to have played Scrooge. Between the two because they made Scrooge their own. In my opinion, George C. Scott's Christmas Carol was the scariest of them all. The atmosphere kind of felt like something out of a horror movie at times. It is the best, and it's very well done by composer Nick Bacot. Jacob Marley and Christmas Future scared the heck out of me as a kid, as if it was like something out of a horror movie, as I mentioned before. Because when you look at Christmas Future, it looks like an axe murder out of a horror movie. Sure. Really liked a lot was when how Christmas Past showed him a lot more than other Christmas Carol adaptations. We see how he met Jacob Marley and how they were very well-successful, greedy, corrupt businessmen. Marley's death, which is very rare to see in a Christmas Carol movie these days. Closest we saw. Showing the past of adaptations out of all Christmas Carol, showing the past. Carol adaptations out there, but these two are my personal favorite of them all. Just the movies, but also talking about the book by Charles Dickens. I hope you enjoyed it. I did the best I could. This was a lot of work to put together because there's so many different adaptations of A Christmas Carol. It's just hard to talk about the ones I've seen so many times and talk about ones I've never seen before. It was probably better that I stuck to the basics. And it's not that I didn't want to include the ones that I've never seen because it was just easier that way. It didn't make sense to include the ones I've not seen if I had no knowledge or I've not seen any of those films. You guys so hope you enjoyed my review and stay tuned for Home Alone. Notification button to get all my latest updates on my channel.